when did you get the sense that Quentin would get drafted, and specifically get drafted in the first round?
We got the sense that he get drafted halfway during the year. So it's the kind of year he's having. Maybe two guards in the country had as good a year as Quentin's. I think he made every All-American team, was co-player of the year in our league, leading the best player on the team that went to the Final Four. You know, I know he's going to get drafted, but I think the first round, I was in Duncanville recruiting. It was in the afternoon. Honestly, I knew Quentin was in Chicago, but you know, when you're on the road recruiting, sometimes you forget there's a world going on around you. And my phone started blowing up. And I looked at my phone and, you know, guys I know in the front office, Brooklyn, Denver, Utah, Orlando, Rockets. You kept telling me how great Quentin was doing. Man, you'd be proud of Quentin. Quentin is playing great. And then I think Kelvin was sitting beside me. I said, pull up. And he said, Quentin, this was the day before he had 27. I think that was his second game. So after the 27, things changed. His agent was calling me probably twice a week. And we were just, you know, because a lot of guys were calling me. The front office people would call me. But last night during the draft, it was before Houston drafted at 22. I don't even remember who they took, but I think Houston had the 2 picks prior to 25. So they had 23, 24, right? So we were on the phone. With, I saw David Bauman, who's Quentin's agent, talking on the phone. And then he comes over to me and says, Scotty wants to talk to you. So I went out in the hall and, you know, I can't tell you, I mean, a lot of this stuff I'm sure they wouldn't want out because it's their draft strategy, but he was going through scenarios. But I think they had 19 and whatever they had. But anyway, they traded those and then they moved back up to 25. But the reason they moved up to 25 specifically was to get Quentin Grimes because that was Tom Thibodeau's guy. When Quentin went to New York, you know, usually he texts me or tell me how he was doing with his picks. You know, obviously I knew a bunch of the guys that on all these teams. So he'd say, so-and-so said to say hello, so-and-so. You know, he'd talk about all that stuff. But last night, I knew Quentin was going to 25, but I also knew that Denver was going to take him at 26, and there was a good chance Utah would have taken him at 30. So I knew he was going to get drafted in the first round going into it. I didn't think he was going to be in the lottery. I didn't think he'd be in the first 20 picks. I thought he would go. Based on my conversations with Denver and with David, I thought he would go to Denver. And then New York, I think, found that out too. And I think that's why they moved up to 25 so he could get Quentin.
We'll go to Randy McElboy with ERC TV. Randy, go ahead with your question for Coach, please. Randy, are you there?
Might be muted.
Randy, can you? I think we're having an issue. Let me go to Greg Bailey with KTRK. Greg, are you ready with a question for Coach?
Yeah, you guys got me okay?
Yes, sir. We hear you.
Hey, Kelvin, I apologize, man. I'm running a little late after Texas practice. Can you just describe for me the emotions that you have, whether that's pride, joy, or anything else, of seeing guys who have invested so much in your program and you in turn have invested so much in their lives be able to go on to the next level and do something that they love to do?
Yeah. So our staff, we were on the road recruiting the last 3 days in Orlando, and Quantas and I came back early so we could get to Quentin's draft party. getting there at 7 o'clock, I didn't care about that because I knew Quentin was not going to go until somewhere around 20. So when we got there, the first thing I noticed was the tension in the room. And so I grabbed my cell phone and started filming everybody, and it basically made everybody start laughing. Loosen up. This is the night we've waited on. This is the night where we've worked for. And Quentin, his dad Marshall and his mother Tanya, they were parked right there in front of the screen TV. His agent's in the back of the room working the phones, and his associate, Coach McNeely, his high school coach, who I had a great conversation with. I love that guy. He was in there, and then a bunch, family and friends, not many. It was a real small group. But things started happening around 20, because that's when we started talking to other teams. But I was just, Quentin's story is worth telling, because I think adversity and failure and battling through something hard, as long as you don't become a victim, it has the chance to be the best thing ever happened to you. And Quentin and I talked about that so many times. 2 summers ago, we went to Italy, and Quentin went with us. We have 2 summer sessions in June and July. He wasn't here for the June session because he didn't make his choice knowing that he was coming to Houston, I think, until after first session started. So I told him, get here, enroll in second summer session, get to know your teammates. We're going to be practicing to get ready to go to Italy. Even though we don't know whether you're going to be eligible or not, you're still going to play, because those games will not affect your eligibility. And so I think about those days when he didn't know whether he was pitching or catching. I mean, literally, there were some tough days that he was going through, because he had some emotional things, I think psychological things that he was having to deal with. Because Quentin don't like letting people down. He's a doer. He's a high achiever. And if he feels he let you down, I think because he's such a great kid and such a high character kid, it bothers him. So we had to work through a lot of that stuff. And then you go from there to when we beat Cincinnati, and he was the MVP of the tournament. He's got the net hanging around him, and he's got the most authentic smile. I thought back to that Cincinnati game, and I said, look at that kid. Look at that smile. Look how happy he is. Come on, man. That's what coaching's all about. Regardless of what people say or think about you, seeing the joy in his mother and father last night, and knowing his journey, and knowing that it was a hard journey, not an easy journey, I think made last night more special for me, because, we invested so much in each other. Our staff invested so much in Quentin, but Quentin invested in us too. He bought in. It's not always easy when you're used to playing one way. Here you got this maniac telling you got to play another way, but he did it. If I told Quentin to run through a brick wall when he got here, he'd probably look to see how he could get around it. But as soon as last season started and he found out what his role was going to be, and he was more comfortable with his teammates, there was more trust with him and the coaches. If I said, Quentin, go run through that brick wall, he said, Coach, can I get a running start? That's the difference.
We'll go to Mark Berman with Fox 26. Mark, go ahead, please, sir.
Hey, Kelvin, you may have touched on this. I didn't have audio for about 3 or 4 minutes. How special was it for you to be there last night, to share in the moment and support Quentin on one of the greatest days of his life?
You're right, Mark. I did go over that.
Well, my bad.
Kind of second-rate equipment. Why is your equipment not the same as everybody else's? I mean, is that a reflection of who you work for? Or you guys can't get it?
I guess so. Yeah, it's a reflection on me.
Here's how you fix it, Mark. Cut it off and then cut it back on. It works for me every time.
So you gonna help me here?
Yeah. What was your question?
How special was it for you to be there, to share in the moment and support your guy in his greatest day of his life?
You know, you just stand back and you watch the family and you revel in their happiness and their joy. You know, a lot of people has helped Quentin, but let's not get this twisted. Quentin earned that. He put in the work. It wasn't easy, the route he took. You know how people thought of him probably in all corners of basketball, coming out of College Park and then going to Kansas, starting off like he did, and then ending like it did, and you know, leaving Kansas, coming here and having to remake himself. You know, buying into our defense, buying into our rebounding, buying into our culture, our ball movement, being a complete player instead of just a one-trick pony. And then last night, you know, I was behind. I was in the back where his agent was most of the night, but I could see Quentin and his mom and dad, and you just reflect. I always reflect when I see kids in those moments. You know, and then obviously we knew the Knicks were going to take him before it came on. I mean, we just had to, you know, we had to act surprised. But when I found out, I think it was pick 21 when we found out this was happening, and then by the 22nd pick, it was done. The only concern was what Houston was going to do. But when it was called, what you saw Quentin do, that was real, man. That was authentic. Those tears, his mother cried like a baby. Quentin cried. His dad was emotional. Seeing them hug each other, just the three of them, knowing what they've been through. You know, when Lauren and Kellen and I hugged after the Oregon State game, you know, that wasn't just for that moment. It was all the moments that went into that moment. And I could really relate to those guys last night, because this has been quite the journey for Quentin and his family.
We'll go to Joseph Duarte with the Houston Chronicle. Joseph, do you have a question for Coach?
Hey, good afternoon, Kelvin.
What do you say, Joseph?
Hey, just without betraying those conversations that you had with the NBA personnel, I was curious, was there one thing or a couple of things that kept coming back when they were discussing Quentin, whether it was a certain improvement or something that transpired during this year that sort of, you know, not just the combine, but just everything that he did to sort of get in that position to where he was being looked at as much as he was, you know, going into the draft?
Well, one of the questions that came up was the Kansas experience. That did come up a lot from usually the way information gathering goes about prior to the draft is the interns or video people that are putting together the edits for the coaches in the organization, GMs and presidents, all those people to look at. You know, they'll usually call the assistant coaches and just get baseline information. And then the closer you get to the draft is usually when I get the most calls, and that's, you know, GM, assistant GM, a lot of the decision makers. Because they, you know, they just want to dot their I's, cross their T's, just like us when we're recruiting the kids. We want to mitigate all the opportunities for mistakes by doing the best job we can vetting. So the Kansas experience is probably the most prevalent question. You know, basketball-wise, it's on film. You know, you see what he can and can't do if you watch the games. So they just wanted to know certain things there. But the only thing I can tell you about the Kansas experience is I talked to Bill Self. You know, Bill and I have been good friends for 30 years. And I said, you know, when I talked to him, Bill explained it to me. He was great. You know, sometimes things just don't work out. There's no one to blame. You know, it's just the fit. Not every fit's going to be a great fit. That's why people move jobs. That's why they leave cities. That's why people divorce. That's why things break up. That happens. It's a human trait. It's not unique or special. But the coming here and I've said this, Joseph, we needed Quentin's talent. We needed that. You know, to get to win at the level we've won at, you've got to have good players, man. You know, you can throw credit wherever you want to throw it, but it all comes down to players. But Quentin needed us too. He needed what our program's culture demands, and we needed to be able to develop that talent. There's no guarantee that that will happen, but when we got him, he was a little wounded, but when he left here, he's ready to conquer the world.
Try to go back to Randy McElvoy with KPRC. Randy, you good?
Yeah, I got it. If you can hear me, I'm driving. Thanks guys. Hey, Kelvin.
Hey, Randy, appreciate your text last night.
Oh, you got it. When you look at his game, I mean, you've coached in the NBA, you know what it takes on that level. What part of his game is like NBA ready now, and what area of Quentin's game do you think he'll? I mean, I know it's an ongoing thing. You always got to work on your game, but what area maybe does he know he's lacking right now that needs to ramp up, in your opinion?
Well, number one, experience. Not to change subject, but I had a really long talk last night with Eric Spoelstra at Miami. And DeJon's, I think, in Miami today, and he's leaving Saturday. I think Saturday or Sunday. They're going to Sacramento to play Summer League. And then he's going to leave there and go to Vegas and play Summer League. So I think he's going to play 4 games in Sacramento, and he's going to play as many as 5 or 6, I want to say, in Vegas. That's experience. Quentin just got to get experience. It's still basketball. Still a 10-foot rim. Free throw line is 15 feet. 9-pound ball. And it's still basketball. If you can shoot, you can shoot. If you can't shoot, you can't shoot. But if I say what's the most ready-made thing he can do, and I'm sure a lot of people would be shocked at this, is defense. Quentin can guard. If I told the Knicks, Tom Thibodeau knew exactly who he wanted. Quentin was Tom's pick. Tibbs loves defense too. He understands what wins championships. But Quentin has an NBA body. He's 6'5", and he'll bounce between 210 and 215, which is, when Eric Gordon first got in the NBA, Eric was about 6'4", and he weighed around 215. That gives those guys a leg up. You think about guys that come in here at 6'3" and weigh 165 pounds, or leave college and they weigh 165, 170. Those guys, they're playing against at this next level in the NBA. Those are grown men. So physically, he's going to be able to compete. Athletically, better athlete than you think. Quentin's athletic. He's not a dynamic athlete. Say like a kid we have here, Tajay Moore. But Quentin is athletic. But I think his ability to defend, I think his willingness to go rebound now and lead the break, he's going to be able to do those things. But the roles guys play in college is not the same role they're going to have with the NBA team. Like some guy may average 25 points a game in college. If he goes to Brooklyn Nets, there's a good chance they're going to put his butt in the corner.
We'll go to Andy Yanez, please. Andy, question for Coach Sampson.
Hey, Kelvin, just transitioning what you just touched on in terms of speaking with Eric Spoelstra. Can you talk a little bit more about DeJon Jarreau's process and just what you heard from him leading up to the NBA draft about Jarreau?
I went to his draft party too. Trust me, those draft parties were a little bit different. But there was 2 or 3 teams that I thought, I think if Miami had a second-round choice, we talked to them a lot the last week. And they had a second-round choice. They tried to buy a pick, I think, from New Orleans. New Orleans sold it to Philadelphia. But they were trying to buy a pick last night and draft DeJon. had they had a second round pick, they would have drafted DeJon. They loved DeJon. I mean, they targeted him. And through the draft, I was downstairs with DeJon's agent, and he was on the phone with one of the scouts, and he said, Coach Spolster wants to talk to you. And of course, I knew Eric from my time in the NBA. What they love about DeJon is, and I told our kids this morning, New York didn't say anything to me last night about Quentin's shooting. That's what it is. You know, he made 100 threes and he shot around 40%. They didn't mention anything about DeJon's percentages or his shooting. They loved how hard they played. They loved their competitiveness. They loved their toughness. They loved their they want that in their program. They want them to bring that. They love the fact that DeJon can play in pick and rolls. They love the fact that he can get in the paint and make plays. And you know, I don't want to get ahead of this, and I'm not going to say it because it's not my place to say it. But they're going to treat DeJon like he's on the team. You know, in the NBA, you can come in the front door, but there's more and more guys every year coming in the back door. You know, we had 3 guys in the NBA this year, but only 1 got drafted. Look at, I think the Nunn kid, you guys correct me if I'm wrong. Don't I have a left-hander for Miami, last name Nunn, that started and played a lot of minutes? Am I right?
Yep, Kendrick Nunn.
Kendrick Nunn,
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, he didn't get drafted. You know, look at the Dort kid from Arizona State. If my memory serves me right, I think he had 40 in a game this year. And started last year against the Rockets. Against the Rockets during COVID, right? He didn't get drafted. So not getting drafted, you know, before if you didn't get drafted, you know, you probably weren't going to make it. But now there's avenues that those kids can make it if they're good enough. But, you know, the NFL has so many rounds. How many rounds the NFL draft? 7? I think there's 7.
7.
You know, there's every year there's 1,000 kids that think they're going to get drafted, but there's only 60 spots. You know, I haven't really. We've been busy around here all morning, so I really haven't looked at the social media stuff about who's the best players that didn't get drafted last night. But there are a lot. Every year there's always guys that you're shocked that didn't get drafted. And most of those guys will have a momentary deal with some momentary disappointment. Then as soon as they sign that 2-way deal and they realize they're going to get guaranteed money, and they're going to be in the NBA, and they're going to have an opportunity to make the team, that disappointment leaves very quickly. So Miami, those guys at Miami, Eric, I mean, they love DeJon. I mean, they wanted DeJon. He was their guy. I could tell that last week.
We'll go to James Mueller from the Cougar. James, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Kelvin, you sort of touched on this talking about DeJon's toughness, but throughout last season, you also talked about his evolution as a leader and some of the intangibles he brought. Can you talk about how those intangibles and his leadership can translate into the NBA locker room with Miami?
You know, that's a great question, James, because that was one of the things that Eric asked me last night to expound on. He said, can you expound on DeJon's leadership? Because I saw where you said something similar to what you just said. And I said, you know, we've been blessed to have 2 great leaders since we've been here of the teams. Galen Robinson was a great leader, and so was DeJon. They did it their own way now. You know, leaders don't try to copy others. It's just natural. Galen didn't have to work at being a leader. First time I saw him play with Texas Pro and Marlon Lowe, I said, that kid's going to be our captain one day. When I saw Nate, I said, that kid's going to be a captain one day. I didn't say that about DeJon when I first saw him, but he evolved into that. DeJon evolved to, he learned how to be a teammate. He learned how to be on time. He learned how to function in a disciplined organization. But he always, And again, I go back to character. DeJon is a high character kid, just like Quentin. Now they're both raised different ways, but DeJon will always be one of my favorites. I mean, I love that kid, everything about him. But I love their stories. I love where they started and how we started with them and the growth they made. And then, you know, it's like a mother and father when their kid goes to college. You know, once they get in that car and they drive away, or they get on that plane and they fly away, you know, things change. But you're proud of them. DeJon's leadership. There's a lot of followers in the NBA. All those guys in the NBA, trust me, weren't leaders on their team, you know. But they'll migrate to him. They'll move toward DeJon, because DeJon's confidence and his swagger. I mean, it's infectious. He's got a little Pied Piper to him. Guys follow him, and the fact that he's such a hard worker, became a hard worker, learned how to practice, understood the value of playing in practice like you want to play in the games. And that was the last piece for him. Once he bought into that, you could just see him take off.
We'll go to Joseph Duarte again with the Chronicle. Joseph, go ahead, sir.
Well, Kelvin, my my question got answered, but I want to go a different direction now. You look at, you know, whether it's the guys that got drafted last year, or with DeJon, you know, a chance, and the guys that were in the league this year, and I believe, you know, between Rob, Corey, Chris, Justin, those guys, you have about a dozen guys now that are playing professionally, either here in the States or overseas. You know, as a proud dad, you know, what do you think about just, you know, in the years since you've been here, and really it looks like the last 4 or 5, you know, you've had that number of guys that have gone on to continue their professional careers.
That's why we win. We got good players. You know, it's you know, I was just talking to Devin Davis the other day. He just signed a great contract. Devontae Pollard, last person I thought would be still playing, still banging around, getting a check. Rob Gray just signed a hell of a deal over in that French One League. Corey, I think, had a deal to play for the Bulls in Summer League, and he signed an overseas deal because it was guaranteed money. But you know, I talked to certain guys. Justin had a chance to play with one of the teams in the Summer League, and I just didn't think that was the right thing for him to do. You know, he needs to go make money. Those windows closed. Justin was a 5th-year senior, and once you start, it's not where you're going to end up. You know, you start kind of low on the payroll, and then every year, you know, usually sign their first 3 or 4 deals overseas is usually 1-year contracts, so they're not multi-year deals or 1-year deals. So I said, Justin, whether it's this year or next year or 2 years from now, you need to go get your first contract, and the quicker the better at your age. And that's reality for some of them. I usually don't discuss that with their agents, because I know these kids better than their agent.
All right, we got time for a couple more questions. We'll go to Dayon Dunlap, please. Dayon, go ahead with your question for Coach Sampson.
Coach, I listened to a pre-draft podcast that you did, and you talked about people will come in the notoriety of Quentin that always have that swagger that you didn't see it early on. At what point did you see his confidence and that swagger really change with Quentin?
Oh, that's a good question, Dayon. Not last year. You know, I'll tell you when. Last home game against Memphis. He was showing glimpses, but he was up and down. You know, like at South Carolina, he had 27 points, but he had 7 turnovers. I told him he had a reversible jersey on. I said, You got Houston jersey on, then you put South Carolina jersey on. Come on, man. You wear that Houston jersey the whole game instead of part of the game. But he had a lot of good games, and then that would usually follow by maybe a not so good game. But then he'd have a really good game. But he was just, just up and down. But toward the end of the year, you could see his trajectory start to go up. And the better he played, the louder he got. Now, Quentin was never a loud guy, but I heard him. There was 2 or 3 months I never heard him. I'd get on him about practicing or talking in practice. I said, Quentin, you can always hear a good team. You never hear the bad ones. I said, and this is how we do it. I was constantly getting him to be like us. But again, his character. But when I say a great kid, he is an unbelievable kid. But he started seeing his hard work paying off. And Coach Quantis, I can't tell you what a great job Coach Quantis did with building his confidence. And, some days I'd get on him and there comes Q right behind me picking him up and getting him in the gym, working on him mentally. We're always somebody said a long time ago, way smarter than I am. We're all working psychiatrists. You're always working on these guys. But at the end of last year, he came back different. And then we got into this year. I remember the first play against Texas Tech, the left-handed kid, what's his name? Shannon. Shannon makes a move and he shakes Quentin, goes up for a jump shot. Quentin goes up and shadows the ball and blocks it. That's swagger, man. That kid's a good player. And Quentin just dominated that one play. But even his missed shots, last year, if he missed 2 in a row, you could see his shoulder slump. Missed 2 in a row now, he didn't look our way. He said, you better not be sending somebody in for me. I'll send them back. That's kind of the attitude he had. But trust, I trusted that kid. And in turn, he trusted us. But he had it all this year. He never not had it. He might not have had some good games early. I think all our guys' shooting percentage is real low early, and then eventually just build them up. I'm sure I have it somewhere on this desk of mine, but I bet you his shooting percentage the last February and March, I bet he shot over 45% from the three. And when we needed a big basket, old Quentin, he'd jump up and stick it. We've always had a guy like that. Armani was like that. Dot was like that. Rob Gray was like that. But Quentin was just different. Quentin's really good, man. He's going to be really good in the NBA for a long time. Coaches are going to love him.
I got time for one more question here. We'll go to Chris Gardner, please, again. Chris, go ahead with your question for Coach.
Coach, how have the offseason workouts gone so far? And if I can, real quick, are you close to announcing the schedule?
Yeah, schedule's done. I don't know why it's not out. Sure. I don't know why it's not out. It's been done. So when are we going to release our schedule?
We're waiting on some contracts to come back to make it official.
Oh.
Everything's set. We just need last people to sign off on it.
Yeah. For me to sign off on it?
No.
It's done. It'll get out here. I think it's been leaked anyway, hasn't it? We got Virginia at home. I can tell you that. I don't know the date. November 16th. Who else we got? December, where? At Alabama. What date? December 11th. December 11th, Alabama. And Oklahoma State too, right? December 18th, Oklahoma State in Dickies Arena. Play a bunch of good teams. So Louisiana, Texas State's going to be picked to win their league. University of Louisiana, Bob Marlin, excellent coach. So we got a good schedule, but we always have a good schedule.
I got time for one more question here. We'll go to Joseph Duarte again. Joseph, fire away, sir. This will be it.
Jeff, I hit the button by accident. So if you want to give it to someone else, be my guest.
If everybody's good, I think we're good. Dejan, do you have a question?
Yeah, one more. Just one more quick
question.
Coach, I know, just real quick, have you decided if you're going to go back to the suit, so you're going to continue with the polo, the casual look, or have you thought about it any yet?
No.
And there you have it. Coach, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you, everybody.
If you coach Robbie Armbruster, that would be the last thing you'd be thinking about. Yeah.
I appreciate it, Coach.
Dan, you look like a guy that appreciates style. From a media perspective, which one do you think we should go with?
From a media perspective, I think that the tie toss is marketable. It's the fans love it. You seen they had the shirts.
I can get it. Maybe I can get an NIL deal on my tie toss. I'm down with that.
Yeah. Comfort is key, Kelvin. Comfort is key.
Oh, I like that too, Joseph. You guys are good, man. What do you think, Andy? Now that you're a big timer, what do you think?
Wearing a suit and tie.
What do you think, Andy?
I go, polos are always comfortable. Like Joseph said, comfort is key.
I'm feeling that. I'm feeling you. I'm feeling that, Andy.
Yeah, I'm wearing a polo right now.
I'm also feeling Dejan, because I'm thinking I got to jump in on this NIL thing. Get me a little tie deal, and every time I throw it, maybe I throw it in the crowd, and I don't know. I mean,
that's money.
I got to get with Lauren and see if we're not hitting on something here. NIL, man, that's where it's at. All right, fellas. See y'all.